Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to BBG, and today we're going to be talking about the African Jews, specifically the Limba and the Beta Israel. When it comes to the first people who we now call Jews, were a part of a group called the Yamus who lived around the Jordan River. The Yamus was led outside of Canaan by a man named Abishai the Hyksos, who I believe is Abraham the Hebrew. For over 500 years, the African Jews, or the Yamus, lived as rulers, slaves, merchants, and translators between Mesopotamia and Anatolia. During the New Egyptian Kingdom period, either during the reign of Thutmose III or Thutmose IV, either majority of them or all of the Yamus and the Hyksos were exiled to the Assyrian desert. Also during the reign of Thutmose III, the Yamus had an elite family who was still in Egypt. We're going to talk about this elite family in another video, but right now we're going to focus on the Himyarites. During the reign of Akhenaten, a social group called the Himyarites conquered over all of Canaan and established their own independent empire in Northeast Africa. The people we call today Jews, Samaritans, and Palestinians started here in Northeast Africa. This golden age lasted between the reign of Akhenaten all the way down to the reign of either Seti I or Ramses II. During the reign of Meneptah, the first man to mention the word Israel claimed that he killed all, if not majority of the Israelites. But of course, we now know that he probably killed the royal or elite family of Israel and not the entire population of the land of Israel. Because of Meneptah and the Sea People, Canaan was now living in the Dark Age. At this time, no Jews lived in proper Africa, but still lived in Northeast Africa, in the form of 12 to 21 different tribes. During the 8th century BCE all the way down to the 2nd century BCE, majority of the Jews and Israelites now lived in Africa and South Arabia. This is because between 740 to 720 BCE, the northern kingdom of Israel was destroyed by Assyria, and around 587 BCE, the kingdom of Judea was destroyed. According to the Bible, between 100,000 to 200,000 Jews fled to Africa and Arabia. Majority of the Jews and Israelites settled in an island called Elephantine. The Jews in Elephantine were living in the golden age between 8th century BCE all the way down to the 5th century BCE. As of right now, I'm only going to say two things about the Elephantine Jews. First, that they were well connected with the Jews in Judea and the Israelites in Samaria, and also built their own temple. The second thing is they had several documents that predates the Bible. Around the 4th and 3rd century BCE, the Elephantine Jewish temple was destroyed. After the temple was destroyed, majority of the Jews ended up fleeing towards the north, while a handful of them ended up fleeing towards Ethiopia. Between the 2nd century BCE all the way up to the 7th century, the Jews of Ethiopia and Arabia were living in the Golden Age. The Jews who was living along the Red Sea were wealthier than the Jews who were living in Judea and had more freedom than any other Jews in the world. They even converted several chiefs and kings into Judaism between the 3rd century all the way up to the 6th century, where the last Jewish king was defeated by King Caleb of Oxum. After Ethiopia reconquered Himyar, the Jews of Himyar and Gondar were exiled into the Simei Mountains. Several priestly families ended up fleeing up north into the modern-day cities of Medina and Mecca, and one group ended up fleeing to the city of Sana'a. Over 100 years later, the founder of Islam, Muhammad, conquered over the wealthy cities of Medina and Mecca. In Medina, he beheaded majority, if not all, of the male members of the Banu Qurayza, and exiled some other wealthy Jewish tribes who were against Muhammad as a prophet in Islam. In order to stay alive, they ended up fleeing off the Arabian Peninsula into an island that was right on the Gulf of Eden, or Adam. According to the Limba, their ancestors were living on a remote island and either were traveling down or fled from the island and ended up in Africa. Between the 10th century all the way to the 15th century, the Limba was living on the coastal regions of East Africa. Ended up living with the Bantus, intermarried with Bantu women, and ended up calling themselves the Limba, which could mean those who wear turbans. Around the 12th century, the Limbas ended up settling in Great Zimbabwe, and probably were the key merchants of the city. Around the same time in Ethiopia, the Beta Israel established their own kingdom. And while the Limba ended up losing contact around the 15th century, the Beta Israel ended up regaining contact with the Sephardic Jews in North Africa and the indigenous Jews in Northeast Africa. And this is where I'm going to go ahead and stop my video. Stay tuned for next week where I'm going to talk about part 2 of the African Jews. Stay tuned, subscribe, and remember, Black and brown people have an equal place in history.